don't hear about how you got to South Africa. We hear about some of the time that you spent in Zimbabwe at the beginning of the book. Now, you were an advisor to Lord Carrington. What was that experience like?
Well, we were in that time. Rhodesia was a big problem for us and everybody. There was a war going on. 30,000 people had been killed, and the British government, before was always blamed for everything that happened in Rhodesia, even though we'd actually given them self-government for 30 years before. So when Margaret Thatcher became Prime Minister, we gave her a very risky plan. She was expecting, kind of wimpy attitude from the Foreign Office. She always believed that diplomats were not the...
Did she believe they were a little wimpy?
Yes, weak and wimpy, she believed. So we gave her this plan saying, why don't we just really take over the country? Since we get blamed for it anyway, why don't we just take over the country, redeclare it a colony, organize elections, ceasefire elections, and then whoever wins the elections we hand over as we've done all other colonies. Now, no other prime minister would have taken the risks involved in that because we had to send troops. It was a war going on, but she liked that. She was a risk taker, and she liked the idea of Britain doing its thing. So.
It sounds like interesting times in Zimbabwe there.
Yes.
Now, what are your thoughts on how Zimbabwe as a country has unfolded?
Well, actually, because we did manage to organize a ceasefire, we held elections, Mugabe won, we helped get the new government get installed, and that did have a moderating effect on Mugabe and his, and his colleagues for a good long time. I mean, for the first 15 years, nearly 20 years of Zimbabwe independence, there was corruption, there was inefficiency, but there wasn't the sort of mayhem there has been ever since. What happened was that after 20 years, he was going to lose power. In a free election, he was going to lose power. So that's when he started, the new guerrilla war, as it were, against his own people internally, and catastrophic land invasions and so on by so-called war veterans, all of whom were not even born when the war ended, and who were paid by the Central Intelligence Organization. So the results have been a complete disaster for Zimbabwe. And to have him today as as chairman of the African Union is actually pathetic.
Yeah. What were your thoughts of Mugabe as a person at the time?
Well, I had a lot of arguments with Mugabe at the time.
Seems like you did a lot of arguing in your career.
He kept telling me, I have a PhD in terrorism, and power comes from the barrel of a gun. And I would say to him, yes, but General Walls right now has more guns than you do. And he's not defeated by any means. Therefore, there's got to be a compromise. There's got to be an agreement and an election. And in the end, he still didn't want to do it. But in the end, President Samora Machel of Mozambique told him, unless you sign this agreement, no more support from Mozambique. And that's why we got to an agreement in Zimbabwe.
Now, I know I'm going backwards here, but how did you end up in Africa as a diplomat? What were you doing before? Because you don't touch on that.
Well, when I joined the Foreign Office, Africa was being decolonized, and nearly most of it was already decolonized, and the Foreign Office knew they didn't know anything much about Africa. That had always been dealt with by the Colonial Office, the Commonwealth Office. So I was sent as a kind of experiment to West Africa to learn about Africa. So I spent a year roaming around West Africa. I went back, I was in the African department dealing with the Congo crisis at the time and so on, and at that point it was then that Ian Smith declared his independence unilaterally. We organized sanctions against him and so on. So eventually the wheel came round, and I was back as deputy governor in Zimbabwe.
Jeez. When they sent you as that experiment, did you want to come? Were you keen to come?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I wanted to see the world, absolutely.